Welcome to episode 125 of Beer with Strangers. I'm your host, Tony Russo, and I'm joined this week with fancy new microphones, as I'm joined each week by
Doug Gray with Extreme Brewing Supplies. Hey, we're here. Anyway, I'll start with the weather report. It was snowing outside just a few minutes ago. It was a nasty, windy day outside. So.
Yeah, and it's cold. It was very, very cold all day today.
Anyway. Winter's not over yet.
No, winter's not over yet, and it's just as well. I haven't wrapped my fig tree, so I only have a couple days to do that. So, my wife
haven't wrapped them yet.
No. I just try to wrap them before the spring, and then I usually put them off until the summer.
But I thought you wanted them wrapped during the wintertime so that all the cold and everything doesn't affect them so much.
No, actually, you wrap them to keep them
from
when
sprouting.
When they bloom. You don't want frost on the blooms. That's what it does. So as long as I wrap them between the time that, because every year it stops, every year it snows in April now, and it's like as soon as my fig trees bloom, I'm like, oh, I guess it's gonna snow next week, so I have until then to get that done. But that's my working plan. All sorts of fun this week. Lots of stuff going on to talk about. We'll start real quick with a little reminder that we have the Love on Tap event coming up, and that is February 5th at Secrets in Ocean City. There are still some tickets left. February 25th.
25th.
And then 4 days after that, I won't have to say February for another couple years, which will make me the happiest man on earth. I got to taste a bunch of the beers, and a bunch of the beers are very good. Well, we'll talk about this more on the show because I want to get to the Extreme Brewing Doug plugs first. And then we'll talk about more. Also, we're drinking. You want to talk about what we're drinking?
Yeah, we're drinking Midas Touch today, which is one of the ancient ale series from Dogfish Head. Now, we've had this recipe available to us probably for over 10 years now because it was in the first copy of the Extreme Brewing, first version of the Extreme Brewing book. So we've had this available for quite a while. But we've expanded the Ancient Ale series now to include Theobroma, Chicha, Pulk, and we've got some more coming out, which will be Chateau Giahu, Tehenket, and Beer Etrusca.
If you're a new listener, you may not know this, but Doug actually brewed all of them again to make sure that they tasted right before he put them back out. So they were like cases and cases and cases of this beer. And you brought them up for a tasting.
Yes, I actually took some up to Patrick McGovern, who's the archaeologist who had discovered some of these locations where they'd got the vessels from. And he did the analysis on it and gave the results to Sam Calagione from Dogfish. So they've brewed these beers from the input from Patrick McGovern. Patrick McGovern is has written a book, which is supposed to be out here sometime, I think second quarter of this year. But they asked me to give a homebrew version of what Dogfish was making. So they told me the ingredients and approximate ratios. And I came up with commonly used homebrew supplies that you could get, as well as all the spices and honey and whatever else was needed to make the beer, as well as the process. So we're starting to have those out available now. I think, as I said, I think we've got the Theobroma, the Chicha, the Midas Touch, and the Pulk available now.
And actually, the Pulk is the only one we haven't tasted here. The other ones, we did tastings on all of them, and they were all quite good. The Chicha you did with
strawberries and pepperberries, which are allspice.
Oh, that was very good, very good.
And the Pulk's got the jalapenos in it.
So hopefully we'll get a chance to try that one again soon. Just real quick, also this weekend at Extreme Brewing, I'll be here doing the filming. They're going to have a mead making class.
Jay Talkington, who's currently brewer at Dogfish, but opening a meadery very shortly. It's under construction. I think they're doing the final touches so that hopefully a month or two he should be in and having things available at his location, which is over just outside of Lewis on Route 9.
And if you can't make it, but you're interested in knowing how to make mead, or if you know anybody knowing how to make mead, we're going to try to do. I'm definitely going to film it. I don't know if we're going to be able to do it live or not. That's something that we're going to have to find out about. I mentioned we have fancy new microphones for those of you who are not watching, just listening. Hopefully it sounds a little bit better. But we'll be using the old microphones because that way I can record them separately, and I think it'll come out real well. So
and if you're interested in coming, please let us know. We've got a limited amount of space, so we want to know how many people are going to be here to try to fit everybody in. So.
Yeah, and Patty's already gone out for snacks, so there will be snacks. So. And if you're interested in brewing something other than mead, if you want to make wine or beer, you have classes coming up?
Yeah, we've got classes. Also, we have a get-together, a winter winemakers gathering, which is coming February 25th. On March 4th, we've got a beer judge, Jimmy Kroom, coming. He's a BJCP certified beer judge. It's an opportunity for anybody who wants to ask the beer judge what's involved in either becoming a beer judge or what are they looking for in beers that are submitted to be judged. On March 11th, we got recipe development from Evolution Brewers. We expect to have Mike Poronsky and Jimmy Sharp here.
I've been writing about Mike a couple times lately. I just keep his name cut and pasted on my on my clipboard so I can just grab it, because trying to I mean, you know, my name's easy to spell. His is less easy to spell.
Thank you.
I wanted to mention about the beer judge thing. If you're a home brewer, this is a good opportunity to kind of figure out, like, you don't always get, I mean, you might have some friends who are judges, but if you don't, you might. Jimmy's been a judge forever, right? He's been a judge for a long time.
Yeah, I think he sat on for his test 3 years ago. I think 4 years ago, when they had the National Homebrew Conference in Philadelphia.
Yeah.
So.
And he's a bright guy, and he's nice. You know, it's one of the things that we talk about all the time is how much good feedback you can get from brewers here, you know, from fellow home brewers and from professional brewers, and everybody's just into sharing. So it's a pleasant.
Not only do you get evaluation, but it'll also try to tell you how to improve your beer to get rid of the negative aspects or the bad things that you don't want to have in your beer. So, also coming up on March 18th, we've got a Grainfather Brew Day. We have recently purchased our own Grainfather, and we're going to give demonstrations and walk everybody through making a beer on the Grainfather. And then on the 29th, we've got a all-grain brew day, and this is in Millsboro. So.
And that's that's almost like a little picnic party. You do it on that. That's always a
hopefully Patty will have chili. Generally chili every time we have brew day in Millsboro.
That's fantastic. And so before we get to the to the news, I also want to talk a little bit to the homebrew section. I want to talk a little bit about Valentine's Day because I got out and we tried some of the XO Stout at Evo, and I forget what a nice afternoon. I've been to 2 beer places.
That's one of the Love on
Tap beers.
Love on Tap beers.
The XO Stout it's got strawberry in it, but it's the Rise Up Stout with tons of cocoa and strawberries. And I think we mentioned last week, it's almost like the bitterness is coming from the chocolate, but in a really, really good way. And I got to be very, very, very masculine, which isn't something I get to do. So we sat down, and the bartender said, you know, what do you have? And I first ordered a Kathy for my wife, and Kathy's their imperial Russian imperial stout. And then I said, you know, hey, do you have any of the XO? And she's like, I can get you some. And I said, well, she'll have the XO. So I got to just point at her and she'll be drinking this. Thank you very much. But it was a lot of fun. I also had a chance to get out to the Pint in Millsboro. And that was a nice enough place. I don't know if you've been or not.
Yes, I have.
Yeah, we had a nice meal. I would have liked to have seen. They have, and we talked about this on a couple of shows ago.
Dine in the vault?
I didn't dine in the vault. No, I sat by the window so I could see all the fun stuff going on in Millsboro. But
it's for those who don't know, it's an old bank.
Oh yeah, I'm sorry. Yes, it's an old bank, and there are tables in there. And one of the things that I've written about it, which is why I wanted to share it, is sometimes you see these places and you're like, oh, that looks like it's a little too cool for school. And this is not. This is a nice neighborhood bar that happens to be in a bank. The people there were super cool. There was not a lot of pretense. My only complaint is that they didn't have a ton of craft beer on tap, and they only had lot 3 on tap. And I've gotten to the point where I just can't just drink lot 3 because that's all on tap. So I had to violate my 100-mile rule for the first time in forever. I ended up having a fat tire, which was fine, and it's always fine. It's a reliable
But they did have
beer.
a craft beer on tap.
They did. They had lot 3 on tap. And I can't complain. They had plenty of bottles, and I think it's the kind of place that doesn't do a lot of tap business. So they had plenty of stuff on bottles. They had Lucky 7 in a bottle, which is what I think my wife ended up having. But anyway, so I can recommend that, both the Pint in Millsboro and of course and always the Public House Evo. I had a poor boy. I had an oyster sandwich, and they put a slaw on top of it. It was apple and some sort of, I can't say it.
Cabbage.
Hickman. I don't know. It's some sort of horseradish like root.
Oh, okay.
It was very good, very good. So I can recommend that as well. And so that'll bring us to the end of the Where Tony Ate This Week portion.
Actually, talking horseradish, you gave me some horseradish a little over a year ago.
Oh, to grow, yeah.
And I dug one this past weekend and made 2 different batches of prepared horseradish. One is really, really hot. Just ground horseradish, and little vinegar, salt, and that's it.
Right.
I made another one, but I put some parsnips in with it. Added a little bit of oil and then salt and pepper, and it's really good.
Wow, that's fantastic.
It's toned it down, the temperature a little bit. You got about half and half, or maybe a little bit more parsnips. You don't taste the parsnips. And if you don't know what parsnips are like a carrot, but they're more white like a turnip, but they got a little carrot taste to them. But with the horseradish, you don't taste the carrot portion of it all. You just taste the horseradish, but it's a down.
It takes the edge off.
Yeah.
Now, did you save some to replant, or?
Oh yeah.
That's the best part of horseradishes. That's the only thing I grow. I just take half and I put half away, but. I'll eat them like fresh out of the ground, and I don't care how much.
Oh
it
man,
burns.
that's
so good.
Cleans your sinuses out.
Yeah, it cleans your ears out. But it's so good. I can't resist taking a little bite every time. I give it a little dusting off. A little dirt never hurt.
But we had some. We had a friend who brought us a batch of goulash and had dinner with us, and that's like hamburger with noodles and other vegetables in it, and I was eating it with that. It was good.
And that's the horseradish actually has always been kind of like a seasoning for, like it's a good meat seasoning. I learned in Williamsburg that they used to use it to hide the fact that the meat was bad.
So you just taste the horseradish, not
you taste this horseradish,
not the disgusting meat.
And your stomach hopefully will kill the germs that you just ate off the 6-month-old side of beef that you were practically eating carry-on. All right, so that'll do it for that'll do it for the eating section. I don't know if you got a chance to look at that at the how to find infections. Did you get a chance to look at that video?
No.
There was a great article.
Oh yes, the homebrew section. Yes, right, yeah. I've been there. Had that problem.
All right, so well, go ahead and take us through what is an infection and how do you deal with it.
We made a batch of beer, and it had one of the White Labs had some bugs in it. It was one of his, I think, Sire Mix, they call it.
So it was on purpose, Bob?
It was on purpose, and it was one of the recipes that was in the original Extreme Brewing book. And the beer came out quite well and tasted very good. Only problem with it is, for the next 2 months, everything we made was having problems. After 2 weeks, which is normal for a beer to be carbonated, we tried it and it was good. Gave some to all the guys who were helping us make all these different beers. They took it home, put it in the fridge, and we're enjoying those beers. The ones we didn't put in the fridge, which stopped all bacterial growth, started blowing up. And the only thing I can say is we finally got rid of everything, and I think it was maybe the bottling bucket or the hosers, the racking cane. Anyway, something was infected, and no matter what we did for the next 2 months, we had that problem, everything was blowing up. And it was so bad, you could open a bottle of beer and the top of the beer bottle would break off because it had such high pressure.
Wow.
That you opened it up and it just gushed out of the top. So it's
when you're working with intentional infections, you can't sanitize enough. Is there you just do pale ales for
and sometimes
batches,
sometimes, and what's recommended now that I know is you do separate equipment. So everything you use for that specific beer or what you're going to have bacterial infections or a bacterial presence, use separate equipment.
That probably makes sense. Well,
and probably even separate beer bottles.
Yeah. Are there a lot of accomplished homebrewers who still use a lot of beer bottles? Is that, I guess...
Some. You may use it for those who... beers that are higher alcohol, beers that, like these, you may not want to put in a keg. Ones that you have done these, used the bugs.
Right.
You may not want to put in a keg because
then that's the only thing you're using that keg for.
Yes, possibly. Or you have to take the whole thing apart, clean up, put new seals on it, put new rubbers, new O-rings, new hoses. I mean, it just goes on, and you think what the beer tastes, or not tastes, but what the beer contacts through its journey out of the keg to serve.
And it's easier to put it in bottles a lot of the time. Well, that makes perfect sense. When you have any? You don't have any sour kits here because that doesn't make any sense to do.
I don't recommend that for people who are doing it occasionally, or even you have to be you have to be a very accomplished brewer and be aware of the situations that we just described.
Because it can be like it's one of those things. It's like hammering fleas. It just
you never get rid of it.
Yeah, it's something that you spend a lot of time chasing down. But when you get started, you can just use a regular kit, and then eventually, if you'd like to move to sours aren't a good beer to start with.
No, definitely not. And sours generally take longer to mature and develop their characteristics. That's part of the problem. It takes a while for the sourness in many of these beers to come through if you're using a yeast mix that has the bacterial bugs in it.
Fair enough. All right, and so now we were going to move to the news section. Actually, I'm sorry. Before we move to the news section, I did want to also ask you to please take a look at my I Love This Beer web series on showcraftbeer.com. It's a lot of fun. And,
a lot of comments on there. I like that.
Yeah. There are people who are just going. I went around to a bunch of different breweries. I get them to tell me what beer they're drinking, and then just say, "I love this beer." It's there. Each of the videos is 20 seconds at the outside, but it's fun to do. And if you want to do your own, which I would like to, I feel like if I keep doing this, eventually I'll get people to start sharing videos of them saying, this is the beer I'm drinking, and I love this beer, and having the drink. So if you do any of those, at least tag me in them. But if you want to send them along to me, I can put them over the music and put the little hearts around it. I think it'd be a fun thing to do. So I don't know. We'll keep doing it for the rest of the month, and then I'll try to remember to do it again next year.
I love this beer, but it's all gone.
But it's all gone. We'll have to do one when you're done. And so now to the news. We want to talk about ciders because we talked about mead at the beginning of the show, and there's going to be a mead making event here. But ciders are another style, another type of fermentables.
Yeah, and they don't really know how many people. Statistically, they don't know what the audience is. Seemed like what I read, it was a lot more in the probably 20-year-olds.
Yeah, younger folks.
And Latino, which is surprising.
And Spanish folks. Yeah. I would have never guessed that in a million years.
But the statistics are few and far between, and the cider industry is trying to figure out who their audience really is. So.
Right, and one of the things that I thought was cool and also makes you suspicious is they said 1% of bar sales were ciders. That means for every 100 beers, one person orders this. That's it. It makes me suspicious only because, if nothing else, Angry Orchard is on tap every place. I can't believe if only 1 out of 100 people, unless they're all doing it here.
It was surprising that a lot of people don't even know what a cider company is.
Right. I mean, off the top of my head, I know Angry Orchard, I know Crispin.
Yeah, those are two I know.
Woodchuck.
It's been around
for Woodchuck's been doing cider
yeah.
forever. That was probably the first cider I had. I don't mind a cider. They're nice in the summertime, but it's a little too... I mean, I'm not crazy about sour beer, so you can imagine I'm not nuts about it. It's a little too puckery for me a lot of the time.
But I think those people who don't like the beer go to ciders because they just don't like beer.
Right, and you don't have to drink whiskey all night. Yeah. I prefer to drink whiskey all night. But I wanted to ask you, we've talked about this a couple times, but cider is probably as easy a thing to make as anything, right?
Yeah, we've got cider kits, but you can also go to some of the local orchards and get apple juice and make your own. So
and you were saying that it has to be unpasteurized.
No. Pasteurized is fine. You can't have any preservatives in it. So, and a lot of places put preservatives in it so that it doesn't prematurely
go bad.
Or
turn into cider.
Turn to hard cider.
So if you buy apple juice with preservatives, it's designed to never become cider. Right. That's the point of it. But you guys, you have them on tap here sometimes too.
Yeah, we do. We have cider kits, and we make it and show people what cider tastes like.
And for me, the upside of that, there's no cooking with cider.
Just mix it
Dump
up.
the juice in.
And we've got a couple new things now. A lot of ciders are coming hopped with hops.
Yeah.
So we've got some kits that have hops in it with lemongrass and lemon peel, and one that's called Okie Dokie that has some oak in it to flavor the ciders, so that it's more like a barrel-aged.
Barrel-aged cider?
Mm-hmm.
All sorts of fun stuff to drink, huh?
We're
never going to run out.
Such few time.
and so little time. I'm sorry, I put my... Oh, the other thing that we want to talk about briefly in the news was San Francisco?
Yep.
San Francisco Beer Festival. Beer Week. The two things that jumped out at me, the first one was, I don't know if I've had a triple IPA, but they said that triple IPAs are kind of bubbling up there, which means it's only a matter of time. But have you had a triple IPA?
No, I can't say I do.
I don't know what does that mean. What do you
just generally higher alcohol.
So is would 120 be a triple IPA?
I think that be reminiscent of a triple.
Right.
So
which actually is a perfectly fine beer. What's interesting about the 120 is it's not crazy hoppy. It's a lot smoother.
But it's got a lot of alcohol in it. It's up
does have a lot
15-16%.
So I'm not crazy about the triple IPAs. I mean, drink what you like and be happy.
Yeah.
But I don't know. There's I think there's ciders, there's meads, there's so many more interesting things to do that just beating the IPAs to death seems like a lot to me.
No, I think it was interesting. The article that I read talked about having seemed like a lot of, in California, almost every brewery had their own triple, but they were talking about having a small glass for the tasting for the event, and that was all they needed.
Right,
because a small glass was all that was necessary. You got to taste it, but you got to taste more than just one.
So. Right, and it's because it's high alcohol, and they also can be palate wreckers, and sometimes you're not going to taste much after that if you drink an entire pint of it.
Higher alcohol generally means higher hops. So.
The other thing that there was that they mentioned about the beer festival, which I got a huge kick out of, was one of the complaints was that there weren't enough beer lists, and I want to defend the San Francisco Beer Festival and saying there's nothing more difficult than getting the brewers to tell you in advance what beers they'll be bringing. It's something that we struggle with when we do our own beer festivals, and the reason is we would love to have printed guides, and occasionally we succeeded in doing it once, and about a third of them were wrong. It was just like, oh no, we didn't have any of that. We didn't bring that because a lot of times, especially with small breweries, they don't know.
We're out of that one. We can't take that one, so we got to take this one.
Absolutely, they don't know until the last minute. So, I don't think it's. I mean, as long as they bring a sign that says what they're pouring, I think that's all you can ask for. And I don't think that. And this has always been my argument, and which is why it was weird to see it as a complaint for the San Francisco Beer Festival. I don't think that it's a make or break decision. I don't think that anybody that was at Beer Week said, well, I'm not coming back next year because there weren't any printed materials with the list of beers. You know, we all have Untapped. Just say, what is that? I mean, if you're enthusiastic enough to participate in San Francisco Beer Week, then you're going to find something to try, I think.
Many things to try. So.
But I guess if people are worried that there are going to be rare beers, they want to get their hands on them. I understand that. But if you have a rare beer and it's on the list, you're also saying that you think you're going to beat everyone else there.
Probably not.
Probably not.
I was surprised that they said there weren't too many long lines. There were a few for the very popular stuff, but for the most part, the lines weren't too bad except for getting in.
Right, and I find that it's similar with our festivals. People are used, like, I think there was a time where people didn't know how to go to beer festivals. So the first tent had the longest line, the second tent had the second longest line, and nobody was at the last tent. But now people are, I think, have a better sense of, okay, let me...
You're down to the last tent and come back the other way.
Let me walk around. And also there are enough beer festivals, and they're extensive enough that people are like, okay, I'm going to go and wander around. Like, wandering around is part of it. There's not this pressure that I have to try all the beers I can. You know the time is your ally, and you can go and you can walk around. Sometimes I'll go, like, at the good beer festival, you know, I probably won't grab a beer right away. I'll probably just walk around. And I mean, if I see someone I know, I'll go and say hello and I'll have a beer.
I hate standing in line, and I'll find another beer if I have to stand in line. Although sometimes there's the real popular beers or the ones that are maybe rare.
Right.
If you really want to get it, you got to stand in line, or be somebody like Tony, who's part of the press and can get it anyway. Yeah.
You walk around with a camera around your neck, people give you more respect. I remember at the Salisbury Beer Festival, we had 90-minute IPA, and people were very, very excited. But like, that was one of the things that, like, word got out. People were like, hey, they have 90-minute over there, and all of a sudden, people were rushing over to, and so that they stayed busy that day. And so that's what is going on in the news. We want to talk a little bit about the cooking show that.
The Hush Puppies, the ESB Hush Puppies.
Yeah, I actually had. I like the Evo ESB beer. It's just a good. It's interesting because I chose this recipe, and again, if you're interested in any of the beer recipes, we post one every week as part of the show notes, which you can find at shorecraftbeer.com. But I was actually I ordered the ESB to go with the oyster sandwich. I mentioned earlier that I had an oyster sandwich at Evo, and I said, you know, what would be nice with that would be an ESB, and yes, it totally was. And so it was really interesting. Then I went home and I'm picking out a recipe, and I saw this ESB Hush Puppies, and that's something that really kind of now. I don't know how much you know about Hush Puppies, but do you remember when they became a thing? Because I know that it was always something that was just, if there was extra dough, there were Hush Puppies, and if there wasn't extra dough, there batter, there wasn't.
More of a, I think, Southern thing.
Right,
Southern hospitality seems to always have Hush Puppies, but there was a fish company that did a lot of fish, and they always had, I can't remember what the name of the company was, but they always had Hush Puppies as a side. So.
Well, yeah, they do it at the Old Mill. They have a Hush Puppies at the side. The Old Mill was the first place I ever saw them like on a menu. I mean, I didn't grow up around here, so you know, I've never seen them on a menu. I mean, I'd had them before.
So from where you grew up, this is Southern.
Oh yeah, I huge fights with my wife and my neighbors all the time about whether or not we're in the South. I always point out that this very moment I'm sitting north of the Mason-Dixon line, but when I get to my house, I am south of the Mason-Dixon line. My favorite kind of Hush Puppies though has always been the beer batter, the leftover beer batter when I do fish. So I can only imagine how good this ESB is this ESB Hush Puppy will taste. And I did confirm that we will be doing I want to say April. I would love to have one out in March, but I think by April I'm going to be trying to do at least one recipe a week. At least one recipe a month, where I film it. And the premise is that I have a crappy kitchen. I don't have, like, you know, a lot of times you'll see a cooking show and they have top of the line stuff. I have mediocre equipment and limited. But
sometimes that doesn't matter. Just got to do it. That's all.
And that's the thing. Like when you want to know how it goes in a normal restaurant. I know how it goes when you know when a professional chef is cooking in a professional restaurant. it's going to taste okay. And so I want to try them out. And then my idea would be like go to the brewery and hand out samples and see like, all right, what's wrong with it? What do you like? What do you hate about it? And then like retool it. Like if everybody's like too much salt or not enough paprika, retool the recipe. Yeah. So anyway, that's something we've been toying with, and something we're certainly going to at least begin to talk about doing, and hopefully get out by April. Other than that, you can follow me on social media. You can hear that at the end in the outro. Please subscribe to our YouTube page at Beer with Strangers. I guess it's YouTube/Beer with Strangers. I don't know. Type Beer with Strangers in YouTube. You'll find it. There's not a lot. Usually there's Big Red Face and Doug. So, and that's all I have for you. So until next week.
Drink what you like and be happy.
All right. We'll see you, folks.